no smell. A lot of things went on, and finally they couldn't take it anymore. They moved out. And then the guy who owned the house rented it to somebody else. And I guess something happened where they had to go underneath the crawl space under the floor, which was between, the ground and the flooring, because it was an old house. And They found a blanket with chains around it. This made the news media and all that stuff. The guy that owned the house killed his wife, didn't even bury her. He just put her under the middle of the house, wrapped up in a blanket with chains.
Wow.
So, to me, it tells me that the deceased was trying to tell my grandmother something. I don't know. Have you ran across anything weird like that?
In my investigation, yeah, I've had where mostly like cemeteries where maybe somebody was unjustly killed and then they want to, be redeemed, and they come to you and they call out to you. So I've had a lot of that with, like, I've done EVP sessions and cemeteries finding out why they died or how they died. So I've had that. I've been at different places, but like, again, my own house when I grew up, they were looking for closure. So the ghosts that died that were killed off from the son that the guy that killed them, they were looking for answers why they were killed, and the bodies, unfortunately, are still buried there, believe it or not. So there's a lot of stuff going on, and I tried to deal with it as a young adult, and then it just affected me because everything else was coming through too. So my mother was psychic, I was psychic. I had just a whole bunch of. Once your contact goes, everybody wants to come and talk to you. So that's another problem I've learned, like in the past.
Interesting. I mean, besides like knockings and stuff like, I mean, could you back then too? Let's face it, too. The laws were changed. Real estate agents, when they were, repping a house to sell it, right? And the owners didn't want to disclose that, hey, somebody was killed in the house, or multiple people were killed in the house, or murdered in the house, or they didn't disclose it. So a lot of people, would buy these houses at a good price because, the people around there knew what happened.
Yeah, well, that's my dad. Like, he bought some great place, and they didn't disclose anything until we found out later the history of what happened. But now, again, like, laws changed as of 1972, 1974. Now, anybody buying something that was a murder, you have to disclose it. If there was something that happened drastically or somebody got killed off in a house.
Oh, yeah. And how old were you, Patrick, when...
Oh, my God. I was like... Well, I guess in my prime as a youth, so I was 14 years old, and I was going through a lot of just problems and things that I couldn't even explain. Trying to live as a young guy, a young kid growing up and enjoying life, and at the same time getting bombarded by ghosts and hauntings and everything else between, black images and the organ playing by itself when it wasn't plugged in.
Oh, wow.
Like being attacked by everything on my bed and everything else that was going on. Yeah.
So the organ was playing without even being plugged in the wall?
Oh, yeah. We just had this weird musical was playing around, and I swear I took pictures at the time, like in those cameras where you'd shoot the film out, and it would take an image, the instrumented cameras at the time.
The Polaroid cameras.
And, man, like, there was just stuff going on, and I could not explain it, but I couldn't tell anybody because they thought you were nuts back in 1974.
Well, how about your friend? I'm sure you had a best friend that you had to share your experience with.
I became an entrepreneur because I thought, well, this is really cool, and I'd actually charge people to stay over. That's how I got my allowance, was to stay over during the night, and if they survived, they give me $5, so I'd make like $50, $60 on a Friday, Saturday night when my parents would go out, and sadly, nobody ever survived.
So you had these people come in and give you $5 to spend the night. Like, hey, is it okay, Mom and Dad, if my friends come over and spend? Oh, sure. They didn't know you were making money off of it, and I'm sure your parents supplied the soda and all the food too. But for the entertainment, refreshments. Well, how did these hauntings go on when your friends were there, paying you the $5?
Well, we'd go all hang around my basement because I was a rec room at the time, and we all like say, okay, what's going to happen? And I wouldn't even do anything. The door we'd turn off the lights and put on candles, and the doors would start opening. You'd hear voices. You'd see, like I had one of those old shag rugs, that you could, use with a rake, and you could see literally footprints walking around through them. It's totally bizarre, and it was like I kind of could handle it, but then the other people that were there, go, oh man, this is too much. They're out of there, and they run out and freak out because the door handles would be opening and everything, and they thought it was a trick. They thought I wired it up, and nothing was happening. Nothing was, made up, and it all happened, and they all freaked out. So I think they all lasted by maybe 1 o'clock or 2 in the morning, and they all ran out. Well, and it was funny because I made my money for the night, and the ghosts got their, fill. It was like hilarious.
Yeah, it sounds like these ghosts were not the most friendly type then either, was it? They were kind of like teasing.
Not at all. Like, there was just other things going on. Well, my house was built on Indian ground. So when the whole place was actually developed in that area, ironically, I lived on a street called Ludgate Drive in Rexdale, Ontario, and Ludgate is another town, a famous town in London, England, that actually runs right to the Stonehenge, which is the most haunted town in London, England. And pretty bizarre how that was connected, how I connected that when I did some research on it.
Wow, it sounds like... Now, how many years did you live in that house?
Oh, my God. I think at least 12 years, because I was there from when I was like 12 years old till I was like 22 at least, because then I couldn't take it anymore. I had to leave. I stayed there because obviously I'm growing up. I'm a kid. I'm in school. I have a lot of money, so your parents pay for everything. And I couldn't wait to leave when I finally graduated and I left. But to this day that I know, the house is still there and people are still going through ghost activity and hauntings and evil shit going on all the time, Well,
did you ever bring any girlfriends over and have them scream and run out?
I guess you call it a romantic paranormal night. I don't know. Yeah, you hear stuff. You try and have a nice night, and the candles would blow out, and somebody else would be kissing your girlfriend instead of you. So there's something going on there. Hey, it's not you. Like, what's going on here? And no, we never ended up getting action those nights at all.
Well, what type of reputation were you getting in school at this point? Because you were charging kids, right, to come and get the paranormal experience.
I was the most weirdest haunted guy. And then, back in those days when you're in the 70s and you're in school, you had to have a gimmick. You had to have something to attract. Otherwise, nobody wanted to hang around you. You either got bullied or beat up, or you did something cool. And I was not into sports. I was terrible at sports. I couldn't do anything. So I decided, I was playing guitar. I picked up guitar, and I was into Led Zeppelin, and I learned all that, and became really cool because now, wow, the musicians were, rocking, and that was the thing in those days. If you're a musician, you got all the girls, and everybody looked up to you, right? So me being, ghostly and always weird and doing stuff and weird recordings, that, well, now the guy's got haunted stuff in his house, and he's a haunted guy, and he plays guitar. So they all that was really cool back then.
Probably. I know myself. Of course, I got out of school in '69, but when I was in school, the Beatles and all that stuff, was really popular. I had to get electric guitar. It started out with I had a trumpet, and my dad said no. I took music up in school. He said, you can't. It's too loud. So then they got me a clarinet, and I hated it. And my dad couldn't stand the squeaking of the clarinet. So my dad had this bright idea. I'm going to buy you an electric guitar, and you can go play it in the garage. Ha, ha, ha. Big mistake. Big mistake. I remember he would come in the garage and say, stop playing Louie, Louie. I can't deal with it anymore.
Well, I played over... Well, I don't know if you were younger when you were into those bands, but the first album that came out, Led Zeppelin, I played that album over and over like 20 times a day. My dad was ready to kill me because he goes, if I hear one more song of how many more times I'm going to kill you.
Bad thing to say in that house. You know that, Patrick.
And so I just kept playing because I thought, well, this is the coolest thing, and Ghost liked it. So I just thought, well, who cares,
Now, did you ever have your record player turn on by itself?
Okay, this is a true story, and I've told this on many radio shows. It actually did. Before Led Zeppelin got blamed for, music going backwards and reverse, it actually happened to me because I was in my room playing my records, and, I put on Stairway to Heaven, and the thing was actually playing backwards. And I hear all these weird voices coming in and through the speakers, and not just the speakers, but through the whole house, through the whole room, and I'm going, holy cow, what's going on here? And it really woke me up. I'm going, oh, well, shit, is like, am I playing with demon stuff or what's going on? And this was before it was even acknowledged that if there was anything in reverse recordings. And I was totally freaked out. I didn't know what to do. And I said, I just grabbed my closest thing, my Bible all the time, and said, well, damn it to hell, and just keep playing music, It was just bizarre what was going on.
Well, did your parents ever have any, encounters with these spirits in that house?
Well, my dad would never admit it because he was, like I said, a military guy. He never wanted to admit anything, But he was. The funny thing is, my room was like facing the hallway all the way out to the living room and the hallway. So when everything happened, they would just close their doors and lock the door and say good night. So I'd be left with being attacked. And they close their doors, and my brother would close his door, and then going, great, now I'm just like, they're all coming for me, like these mist things and big black images and black, whatever, hooded figures about 7 to 10 feet tall walking down the hall, coming for me, and they go, this is just really great, thanks very much.
That is really scary, Patrick. Now, did you ever find out that how many people died in that house in that murder, and how old were they?
There were 3 that died in the house. I could never figure it out because the weird part was that, well, eventually we did, and then fires would always be starting in the basement. Like, you go down to my dad had a workroom, and, with a bench, and just fires would start up, and then you hear screeching, and then you hear luggage cases and everything being drawn across the floor, somebody screaming in there, nobody around whatsoever. And then my mother had one of those fruit cellars, and it was really interesting because every time I went in there was always blood dripping from the ceiling onto the floor, yet, you wipe it up and be dripping again. And my mom always thought it was like raspberry jam or something from the shelf. And then I go, no, raspberry jam doesn't come from the ceiling. So he'd wipe it up and it'd be dripping again. So there was obviously, leftover residual of murders and blood and everything else around my house all the time.
It sounds like it. Now, Patrick, we need to take a 2-minute break for the radio stations. We'll be back in 2 minutes with Patrick Cross talking about, his paranormal experiences when he was a kid and then what he did as an adult. And I still want to find out about these alien abductions and the UFO. So stay tuned. You're listening to Night Dreams Talk Radio, and we'll be right back.
Bizarre stuff.
Jake the Nagger was a biker, and he drove his motorcycle that fast. He drove a big chop hog with a gang colors jacket, and he ran down citizens for laughs. He had an old lady named Petula, packed an automatic 45 gun. They had just come up from California, where they shot 6 cops for fun.
Jake thought it was the best there was. Down the interstate he'd roar, till the day he tangled with the county sheriff. They all called 104.
It was late on a Thursday evening, and Jake, he was feeling kinda mean, 'cause he'd just run out of his favorite drug, the one called amphetamine. So he sauntered up to Petula, and it said,